Good evening and welcome to the February 12th, 2024 meeting of the Planning Board of the Town of Chatham. My name is Catherine Halpern. I'm Chair of the Planning Board of the Town of Chatham. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format, both in person and with remote participation. I'll read you a few points on that in just a moment. Please also note that this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. Also, if anyone else is recording the meeting, we do need to be notified. Please let us know. I'll give you a few seconds in case you're connected remotely, but I don't see anyone remote. All right, there being none, we'll go on. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law GL 30A-20 until March 31, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Planning Board is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while it's in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, and the conference ID number is 876-265-286#. That's 876-265-286#. Or as I mentioned, you may also join the meeting online using Microsoft Teams through the link that's in the agenda that's posted on the town website. Excuse me. Well, this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, formerly Channel 18. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. And as I mentioned, we'll post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Before we do a roll call of the board, I would like to introduce to everyone our newly appointed planning board member, Frank Shearer. And Frank, would you like to just mention a few points about your background? I understand you are a Chatham resident for many years and you're retired from a law practice.
Yes, we've had a second home here.
You have to press your button. Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
We've had a second home here for many years, but 3 years ago we became permanent residents.
Great.
And one of the reasons was I have a daughter who lives in North Chatham with her husband and 4 children, all of which are in the school system. And one is on the way, so there might be 5.
Great.
Soon. I was, for most of my career with Timex Corporation, I headed up the legal and HR functions. In my government-related activities, I was on the Charter Revision Committee for Woodbury, Connecticut, and the Historic Commission and the Zoning Board. In my charitable activities, I've been on the boards of several, like the local hospital, the United Way, our local land trust, etc. So when I moved here, I was very interested in becoming civically engaged again. That's who I am.
Great. Thank you so much. Well qualified, and we're very happy to welcome you to the planning board. Thank you so much for volunteering. So let's do a roll call of the board members. Art Spru.
Art Spru, present.
Warren Chain.
Warren Chain, present.
Bob Wertschafter.
Bob Wertschafter, present.
Frank Shearer.
Frank Shearer, present.
And Bob Dupas and Charlene Greenhalgh are not present tonight. But we do have a quorum, so we'll continue. All right, so does anyone need to recuse themselves from any matter on the agenda tonight? All right, so first item is the minutes from the January 22nd meeting. Any corrections, additions, amendments? There being none, may I have a motion to approve?
Art Spru will make that motion.
And a second, please.
Bob Wertschafter seconds.
All right, we'll vote, and Frank, you were not here, so you don't need to vote. Art Spru,
Art Spru, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approve.
Bob Wertschafter,
Bob Wertschafter, approve.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve the minutes from January 22nd as drafted. Next item on our agenda is a continuation of a public hearing that is regarding a modification of a definitive subdivision plan for 0 Clio Lane. And this is a continuation from our December 18th meeting. So it is a public hearing. The public hearing was not closed. The public hearing is still open and will continue where we left off in our public hearing procedures was just before we would generally close the public hearing and deliberate and vote during board comments, and there was some additional information and revisions that the board requested from the applicant, and I believe you have provided that. Is there someone who'd like to present? Yes. Would you like to present? Introduce yourself, please, and present the revised materials that you've provided for the board.
Hello, my name is John Broderick, and I have gone to the, in front of the board for modification of the subdivision plan back in 2018. And at the request of the board, they thought that it would be best if we eliminated the paved surface and the drain to create a rain garden to absorb any pooling that may occur at the base of a small incline at the end of Clio Lane into my property. So the rain garden is to the left, which is basically where the dry well was going to be. And the natural grade of the land does come from the left portion, if you will. It will grade towards the center of the road. And what we want to do is we want to have definitive cobblestones around the T, and the part where the rain garden will be pitched towards the rain garden, and we'll have the natural grasses there and some shrubbery. Once again, I just remind the board, I live where the picture of the deck is, the vehicle, that's my dwelling right there, that's my cottage. And I drive from that driveway out to Clio Lane quite often because it's a single driveway, and if there's more than one car in the driveway, it's just the easiest way for me to get out of my driveway, essentially. So, and I've been doing this for years, and even with very, very heavy rains, there might be a little bit of pooling, but nothing significant, really. And the drainage is incredible. One of the board members back in 2018 said that they wished that their property perked as well as it does. So this is the suggestion of the board, and I hope it's approved by the board this evening.
Thank you. And also, I'll just point out, if you look at the updated staff report that was prepared, the original statement of conditions is included. We just need to consider if we need to modify that. Also, we do need to, of course, change the date and update the date for the statement of conditions and reflect the new plan that was submitted this evening and title and the date of the plan. So I just wanted to point that out. The public hearing is still open. I'll ask the board if you have any questions or comments for the applicant.
Could you explain the difference between the packet that was sent out and what we got here? Is there something I'm missing that is in this right here that we just got?
I think it was, that's the hard copy of what was emailed. Yeah,
Okay,
and there was,
that's all
yeah.
I don't want to try and go back and forth between these two, trying to find.
It's just a hard copy.
Okay.
I'm a hard copy
Thank you.
person. I need to have it right in front of me. Thank you. Did you want to make a comment, Katie? And then Katie did prepare an updated staff report to reflect what's on the new plan. And basically, as I see it, at the December 18th meeting, we requested some revisions, and basically the applicant has provided a plan with those revisions. Any other questions or comments from the board? Yes, Art?
Just one clarification. There was a suggestion by staff to update the statement of conditions to reflect the new plan date and title. The comments by staff reference Thursday, February 7th is the date on the plans, and the plans, February 8th, the plan actually shows February 7th. So I
Yes.
just want to make sure the correct date was used. I don't have any comments. The applicant did exactly what we asked him to do, and it looks great.
And I'm just going to ask you, Art, are you good with the conditions, with the prior conditions, except for the date change?
Except for the date. All the conditions, I think, still apply.
Yeah, I agree. Any other comments, questions from the board before we vote to close the public hearing? Katie, did you have a comment?
Just wanted to make sure, as it is a public hearing, Madam Chair, that we accept comments from the public if there are.
Yeah, I mean, technically, we've gone through that, but since it's new information, we should do that. I think you're correct. Do I have any comments from the public? First, we'll take public statements in favor of the application. Any public statements? And then do we have any public statements opposing the application? Any hands raised? No. All right, great. And we don't have any correspondence? All right. If there's no other comments or questions from the board, may I have a motion? Once we, just a reminder, once we close the public hearing, there can be no further public participation and no further discussion with the applicant. The board will simply deliberate and vote. So if there's no further comments, I'll ask for a motion to close this public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing.
And may I have a second?
I second that.
All right. Let's do a vote. Art?
Art Sprue, approve.
Warren Chain?
Warren Chain, approve.
Bob Wirtschafter?
Bob Wirtschafter, approve.
Frank Scherer?
Frank Scherer, approve.
All right, so the public hearing is now closed, and the board can deliberate, so we can have further discussion if we need to. If not, we can go ahead and vote to approve the revised subdivision plan as presented, with the conditions as presented, with the change of date, as Arthur has noted. May I have a motion to that effect?
Art Sprue, I'll make that motion.
May I have a second?
Bob Wirtschafter, I second.
And we'll vote. Art Sprue?
Art Sprue, approve.
Warren Chain?
Warren Chain, approve.
Bob Wirtschafter?
Bob Wirtschafter, approve.
Frank Scherer?
Frank Scherer, approve.
And this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thanks, Art. All right. Next item on our agenda is again a public hearing. This is a new public hearing regarding a subdivision plan, a definitive subdivision plan for 50 Stetson Cove Lane. So before we begin this public hearing, I'm just going to review the public hearing procedures. First of all, the public notice will be read. Usually we have the planning board clerk read it. Charlene Greenhalgh is not here. Our Vice Chair, Art Sprue, has agreed to read the public notice, followed by the presentation by the applicant. The board will have a chance for questions and comments at that time. Then we'll take public statements in favor of the application. Then next, I'll read correspondence, if there is any. Then we'll hear public statements opposing the application. There'll be a chance for rebuttal from the applicant, and then a chance for further board questions and comments before we would close the public hearing and enter formal deliberations and vote. And just a reminder that once we do close the public hearing, there's no further audience participation. So, Art, could you begin by reading the public notice regarding 50 Stetson Cove Lane?
Public hearing notice for consideration of a definitive subdivision plan, Chatham, Mass. Planning Board. As required by Mass General Laws, Chapter 41 and Section 81L and 81O, the Planning Board of the Town of Chatham will hold a public hearing on February 12th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. at the Chatham Town Hall Annex located at 261 George Ryder Road, Chatham, Mass., to consider the application of application 24-2, DS Land Surveying, Inc. and Clark Engineering for approval of a definitive subdivision plan entitled Subdivision Plan of Land, 50 Stenson Cove Lane, Chatham, Massachusetts, showing a subdivision of land owned by Watts Realty Trust, David Watts trustee, plan prepared by Clark Engineering LLC and TS Land Surveying, Inc., dated July 12, 2023, and revised December 15, 2023, and showing two proposed lots. A copy of the plan and application may be reviewed at the Community Development Department located at 261 George Ryder Road on weekdays between the hours of 7 a.m. and 4 p.m., Monday through Thursday, and 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Friday. Any person who is interested or wishes to be heard on a proposed subdivision plan modification shall appear on the date, time, and place designated for the hearing. Charlene Greenhall, clerk, posted in the Chronicle on January 25th and February 1st, 2024.
Great, thank you, Art. So then we'll have a presentation by the applicant or agent, and we have Dave Clark. Could you please introduce yourself and please go ahead?
Yes, David Clark, Clark Engineering, civil engineer of the project. On behalf of the Watts Family Trust, Brad and Peter Watts are here in attendance at tonight's meeting. This is a subdivision of Lot 4. Lot 4 was created in 1964. It was part of a 4-lot subdivision that created Stetson Cove Lane. Since 1964, one of the lots, two of the lots were re-subdivided in 1985 to create additional lots and also create Stetson Cove Lane extension. At that time, in 1985, there were 6 lots that had frontage on the combined Stetson Cove Lane and Stetson Cove Lane extension. And 3 of the lots had enough upland to have guest houses. So in 1985, the planning board approved the plan and with a potential of 9 houses on this road. Since then, 1985, 2 houses have been built, one by the Watts family, one by the Wells family. One of the lots is now owned by the Chatham Conservation Foundation. And then the Watts property was developed between after 1964. There was already, in 1964, there was a dwelling and another residential structure on the property. And then a third residential structure was built. So there's currently on the lot that's before you tonight, or the subdivision, there are 3 residential units on the property. So the plan is to divide it as shown on the plan. Because of the configuration, the dwellings either have to be removed or relocated on the property. And because this is a subdivision and everything has to conform to the zoning bylaw, we have to remove one of the residential units. So, with that in mind, that one lot was gifted or sold to the Conservation Foundation and will not be built on, we're removing a dwelling unit from the property, the Watts property. We felt, and we've applied, requested a waiver from the road construction requirements of the bylaw. We feel that the existing ways that had already been approved by the planning board for up to 9 dwelling units in the whole area, we're actually creating a reduction with this subdivision and also with the Conservation Foundation lot. We feel the roads are adequate for their intended use because the intended use is less than the existing use. That was the primary reason we filed a preliminary plan last year, and the board reviewed it. And we were comfortable enough to proceed with a definitive based upon the discussions we had at that time. Some of the improvements that the board requested was the adequacy, or one of their concerns was the adequacy of Stetson Cove Lane. And at that time, we looked at the prior approval and what's there now, and Stetson Cove Lane, over the last 30-plus, 40 years almost, is no longer to the width that was approved in 1985. So you look on the last sheet of the plan set, plan a profile and the details for road construction, we are proposing to restore Stetson Cove Lane to what was the prior approval of the board, which was 12 feet of a dustless and durable surface and 4-foot clear shoulders. So basically trimming the existing vegetation back to give an adequate corridor for fire equipment and things like that. As I stated, all the two lots comply with zoning. There's a minimum of 40,000, minimum of 40,000 square feet of land area for each lot. And each lot has a minimum of 20,000 square feet of buildable upland. They're in excess of that because the Watts family also owns the salt marsh that goes out to Stetson Cove. So the lots are well in excess of what's required for total land area under the bylaw. As far as utilities, we don't show them on the plan, but the houses now are served by town water and electric and communications. Electricity gets fed off of Skunks Neck Road. There's a utility pole just opposite the intersection of Stetson Cove Road and Skunks Neck. There's a drop there, and it goes underground to this property. Town water, in 1990, when the town went through an extensive expansion of municipal water service, 8-inch main was brought down and looped to Leono Drive, which circles back out to Stage Neck Road. So there's adequate water already on the property, adequate municipal and private utilities. We went to the Board of Health 2 weeks ago, or last week, 2 weeks ago, and they approved the subdivision plan. I think that's it. I'm happy to discuss the waiver we're requesting. I think last time, I don't know if we had comment from the Wells family, which owned the other houses on the extension, but their intent back in 1985 was to keep this a rural neighborhood and not have 20 feet of pavement servicing these lots. I believe they want to keep it as a rural neighborhood. So be happy to answer questions.
Okay, good. Before we go to board questions, I'll just point out in your staff report about referral responses. Zoning review, I have no concerns for the proposed subdivision, provided the applicant removes or relocates the structures to be in compliance with the required setbacks for the R40 zoning district. Police Department, no concerns. Airport Commission, no concerns. DPW, no concerns. Council on Aging, no concerns. Natural Resources, no concerns for water quality. We have not yet received comment back from the Fire Department. So with that, let's open it up to board's questions and comments. Art, do you have some comments or questions for David?
Just a few clarifications, David. So some of the plans are showing just highlighting just lot 27 and 28, and then some of them are showing, the combined lots. I'm just concerned about what is your process, because the two lots have to be, combined in order for the subdivision to be accepted, correct?
Yes and no.
Okay. Well, I figured there's process that you have to go through, but,
In my opinion, if Lot 28 and 28A are in common ownership, they're merged by matter of law.
okay,
They can't be merged through the planning process or through the registry of deeds, because Lot 28 is registered land, and registered land goes through the land court process.
okay.
28A is unregistered land. You cannot, land court does not recognize 28A. And that's why there's two plans for the board to endorse.
Yeah.
One that goes to the registry, the other one goes to the land court.
All right, so then you did clarify it for me. That's good. I just want to make sure that someplace we have in our records, I understand the issues with the registry they have to deal with. I want to make sure that it's, the subdivision really is based on the combination of
Correct.
each of the lots plus the adjacent
For
lots.
zoning purposes,
Yeah.
yes.
I think the other comment I had is, and maybe we can discuss this later, is I just want to make sure that our condition 9 regarding the either making sure that the applicant removes or relocates the structures in compliance with the required setbacks is make sure that our language is clear on that associated with that, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's understood in that neither lot can be conveyed
Okay.
until the structures, because as soon as they get conveyed, it's a zoning violation because they're no
Right.
longer in common ownership.
And I think regarding the roadway of Stephenson Cove Lane, your request and your proposal to deal with the current roadway with upgrading the gravel portions of it and the width, I think that's acceptable. I've been through there several times, and that's been serving those properties just fine.
In other words, you have no issues with the
No
waiver?
issues. I think we should
Yeah,
just make
good.
sure that's part of the condition, that's all.
Yes, I wanted to ask about that. We need to include that as an additional condition if the board accepts the waiver. Yeah, okay, great. Warren, do you have comments or questions for Dave?
Just a question of clarification. Clearly, there are wetlands in the mix here.
Yes.
And has the Conservation Commission had any involvement at all in what the intended, housing construction is going to be proposed?
Conservation will have, it's mandatory we file with conservation for any work on the buildings, including the demolition.
But, I just wanted to inquire as to whether there were any known issues that needed to be addressed. Because basically what we're being asked to do is assume that there's nothing on the property and you can just subdivide it. So there's a plan afoot, I assume, to build a couple of houses.
Yes.
And, given that the wetlands are in the mix, I was just curious as to whether there were any known obstacles.
The Wetlands Protection Act and the conservation regulations are there to ensure that the proposed activities have no impact on the wetland resource areas. So when new houses are proposed, we will file a notice of intent with conservation. They'll be reviewing the entire house construction project as it relates to their performance standards for the wetlands that are located on the property. So the wetlands would be the salt marsh, floodplain. There is no coastal bank for a large stretch of this, but basically it's the salt marsh and the floodplain. Under zoning, we're not allowed to alter any of the land within the floodplain, either regrading and we would have to come back to you if we were proposing a driveway, which certainly there's plenty of upland on this property, and we wouldn't have to do that. But I foresee no reasons why the Watts family can't propose something that would be acceptable to conservation, with conditions, obviously.
You had mentioned floodplain. I did not see a delineation of floodplain, nor did I see it in the write-up. Is any of this property in a floodplain? I assume some of it must be.
Almost two-thirds of it. And that's why, you know, the lots combined, each lot is over 85,000 square feet, and the other one's over 77,000 square feet. But the buildable upland's only around 35, and that's primarily because of the floodplain. And the floodplain line is shown on the plan. It's called out as the limits of the Coastal Conservancy District, elevation 11.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's on the subdivision plan and the topographic plan also.
Okay. And also, I saw your write-up on essentially drainage. And so as far, that's not my area of expertise. I'm assuming that from what I read in it, there's absolutely no issue with drainage with anything that's being proposed here.
No, we had actually done, Clark Engineering had done the septic upgrade for Brad and Peter's father years ago, and it's all clean coarse sand out there. We show a leach pit for the new driveway to access Lot 28. That design presumes that at some time in the future, the driveway might be paved. So it's the worst-case scenario. So, and it's adequate for that entire length of driveway.
But thank you. No, I have no other questions.
Thanks, Warren. Yeah, Arthur?
Just one clarification. I didn't want you to think I didn't review your stormwater. I did. It's good. Your driveway, you're supposed to show a profile as you did because it's in a panhandle. You're capturing all of that, and your infiltration structure is the appropriate use. So, thank you.
Yeah, just the 9 houses that should have been there are now, you're asking us to let the driveway go because there's less than 9 houses? Is there no traffic that will be connected to people visiting the conservation area, or?
The conservation lot is at the corner of Stetson Cove Lane and Skunk's Neck.
Okay, so that's not part of the
Correct.
drive.
And we're asking for waivers for constructing the road on our extension. And the primary reason for that is there won't be an increase in dwelling units, it's actually a reduction on our property itself. And it's the Watts family will be the only ones using that portion of the road.
No, you answered my question, that's fine. And the,
I'm sorry.
there is enough upland that is outside of our concerns about driveway. That
Correct.
was my other
Yes,
concern.
yeah, none of the existing driveway that services the 3 residential structures is within the floodplain.
Okay.
Like, not talking. That's the floodplain line, and there's the driveway.
Okay. Thank you, that's all I have.
Could have used the pointer.
Frank, did you have some questions?
It's for my own education. Why would the A lots not be registered?
The registration process on these properties took place a century ago. And typically, the registration process takes place when there's a question of title. You know, who owns the property? Either owner's unknown, which is a lot of reasons properties went to the land court, or there were conflicting boundary lines, or a boundary line dispute, which the land court settled. So I would imagine the unregistered, they came out of a different chain of title, and there was no question of either the boundaries or ownership of the unregistered portion, so there was no need to register it.
Okay, but currently it's the same title.
It's in the same title, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
No other questions? Any other questions or comments from the board? Then I'll ask for public statements in favor of the application. Anyone from the public or anyone connected remotely? There's no correspondence, so I'll ask also for public statements opposing the application. Anyone present or anyone connected remotely? No
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Yes,
Hi, this is Paul Afonso. Not that I'm registering in opposition, just for the record that our family lives the abutting property at 15 Stetson Cove Lane, and have deep respect for the family there of many, many years, including the late father. And so just wanted to make the record clear that I was in attendance and listening, and I may have some follow-on questions with the engineering team, but other than that, just wanted to make my presence known as well. Thank you for your time.
thank you. Now would be the time to ask your questions in our public hearing
No.
procedure.
Well, to the extent, I don't know if it's an appropriate one, as real estate law is not my expertise, but is it the intent, if it's an appropriate question, is it the intent for the two new homes to be sold or to be owned by the family?
At this point, it's going to be retained by the family. This is part of an estate planning of the property.
Thank you. And if you have
And
any
that-
other questions, please go ahead now. Yeah.
Just the other question, if appropriate, the demolition work, I assume at that point there'd be other permitting requirements before that begins as well, and we'll reach out and further discussion at that point. But I assume there's a process, a detailed process for the authorization for that. You can imagine a concern being a neighbor there during that process as well.
Go ahead.
The demolition of the buildings, you will receive notice of the application to conservation for the demolition of the buildings, and there will be details on how that happens. Both erosion control, dust, and windblown material from the demolition all gets handled within the conservation review process.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any other public comment, either in favor or opposing? I don't think there's need for any rebuttal from the applicant. So then we ask for any further board comments before we would vote to close the hearing and deliberate and vote. Any other board comments or questions?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Scher.
Question. The requirement that the structures be, or at least one of them, be taken down to comply with the setback. One of the conditions is that doesn't have to occur until something happens in the future, not right away.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering why, maybe staff can elucidate why that would be. Why wouldn't we want compliance with the setback now?
Frank, that was one of the points I was bringing up, too. I wasn't quite sure about the language that was in condition 9, so I wanted to deliberate on that further.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's maybe Katie, if you have a few points, it's generally been our practice that we make it a condition that prior to building new structures, in other words, prior to the subdivision, in a sense, being used and being enacted, the old structures have to go, but we haven't required that it's done before we give approval to the subdivision. But I'll ask Katie if you have more information on that particular point.
Sure, this was a condition that was suggested by our central permitting coordinator, just based on, based on our zoning bylaw. So if we can check with the applicant whether or not it would be an issue. I'm not sure, David, if you've had a chance to see
I have not.
the proposed condition. So it's lot 27 and 28 shall not be conveyed into separate ownership until such time that the existing dwellings are moved or relocated in order to comply with the setback requirements of the protective zoning bylaw.
That's fine. It kind of goes in line with a regular subdivision in that
Yeah.
the lots aren't technically building lots till they're released by the planning board and they have frontage on a road that's actually constructed or a bond is posted. So think that's a problem.
All right. And as I said, this has been our practice. Are you satisfied with that information, or do you
Well,
have more questions?
To some extent, I'm displaying my ignorance because I'm so new to the board, but once approval is given, do the new lots exist at that time?
They do. Dave, do you have a comment?
There's two ways to look at it. The planning board endorses the plan. The lots exist on paper, but they're not legal building lots because the house would still exist. It's same with a regular subdivision in that the planning board endorses the plan. The lots exist on paper, but they can't be conveyed, and they're not building lots until road construction's been satisfied. So this is kind of similar to that. There's one of the problems with requiring either road construction or the houses to be removed, basically locks the owner of the property into the subdivision. Even the subdivision control law states that the owner of the property could convey it as a whole to somebody else. It's when you convey one of the lots, now the owner is basically implemented the subdivision.
And before that conveyance would occur, the structure would be brought into compliance with the setback?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because technically, as soon as you convey it the way it is now, it's a zoning violation, and the building inspector would be required to send notice that you're in violation of zoning, and it needs to be remedied.
Thank you.
And he most likely wouldn't give a building permit either, for something new.
Yeah. And the approval of the subdivision is with this condition.
Yep.
So this condition has to be
Yes.
satisfied for the subdivision to be implemented, you could say. Yeah. Art, do you need that condition to wording amendment
No, I
changed?
think I'm good. I think the clarification that David said, especially about you're not going to get a building permit unless you've corrected the violations, so that makes sense.
Okay. Any other comments, questions from the board before we close the hearing? I'll just also make the comment that we do want to add the condition that the board has granted the waiver for Section 5. I'm sensing that the board is in general agreement that that is okay. All right, if there's no other board comments or questions for Dave, may I have a motion to close the public hearing? And again, a reminder, once we close the public hearing, there'll be no further audience participation.
I'll make that motion.
And may I have a second, please?
This is Warren Chain, I'll second it.
All right, so the public hearing is now closed. Any further deliberation or question? Oh, sorry. Thank you. Moving ahead too fast. So let's vote. Art Spru,
Art Sprue, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approve.
Bob Wertschafter,
Wirtschafter, approve.
Frank Scherer.
Frank Scherer approves.
This is Catherine Halpern. I also approve that we close the public hearing. My apologies. Any further deliberation from the board before we move to vote? If none, may I have a vote that we approve this subdivision plan as submitted with the conditions as submitted, with the added condition that the board grants the waiver for Section 5. May I have a motion?
I'll make that motion with the amendment that there is going to be attention to the roadway, to re-gravel the roadway and make sure it's 12 feet wide. Is that what I heard from the
Yes.
applicant?
Yes.
I think we should just add that as a condition too.
Okay,
And I'll make that motion with that change.
thank you. Can I have a second to the motion?
Warren Chain, I second.
All right. We'll do a vote, roll call vote. Art Spru,
Art Sprue, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approve.
Bob Wertschafter,
Wirtschafter, approve.
Frank Scherer,
Frank Scherer approves.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you,
for your
Mr.
time.
Clark. Thank you for your very clear presentation. All right. Next item on our agenda is a limited site plan review, and this is for 195 Meeting House Road, the Chatham Baptist Church. You're doing some revisions to your parking lot, adding some solar panels. Could you introduce yourself and please present the project? Thank you.
Sorry, Dan Clinton, here for the property at 195, to build solar parking structures in the parking lot. So really no disturbance to the parking lot at all, except for there is a very small grass median in the middle with portions of curbing around it, but most of them have been taken out over time by snowplows, I assume. Currently, there's a median in the middle, so the parking would sort of nose in to the middle this way. So we're proposing to run the canopies in the direction where they're best with the sun facing south, and then change the parking to change the striping and the flow of the parking lot after the canopies are built. And then we would like to seal up any cracks and then top coat the parking lot surface once construction's done, so.
Great. And I'll just note from your staff report, the referral responses. Zoning Board of Appeals, no review is required. Police Department, no concerns. Fire Department, no comment received as yet. Health Department, no concerns. Historic Business District Commission, no review is required. Airport Commission, not located in the runway protection zone. Conservation Commission, no jurisdiction over the property. Traffic Safety, no jurisdiction. Department of Public Works, you do have a copy of the note from Mr. Faley, that he does have some concerns over the channelization of stormwater and potential stormwater runoff onto Meeting House Road, and you do have his comments attached. We'll address those in a minute. I just want to remind the board that this is a limited site plan review. It's regulated under the Dover Amendment, which means that we do a limited review. We should really just be looking at the adequacy and arrangement of pedestrian access and circulation, walkway structures, and overall pedestrian convenience, location, arrangement, size, and general site compatibility of structures. For your convenience, Community Development Department staff gave you tonight the before, the arrangement of the existing conditions of the parking lot, and then you have how the proposal is to change them, so we can evaluate that. And with that, I'll just ask the board if you have any questions. Maybe I'll start with Art.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. With the DPW's comments and concerns, there are two catch basins that are at the driveway and the property line at each of the drives. I think they capture Meeting House Road runoff. There is some runoff that comes from the property. So with these panels, the existing drainage, and these are going to be comments, first of all. We're not talking about anything else. I just want to air my thoughts in here. The existing drainage with a open parking lot like this, it's sheet runoff. Runs on it, hits in it, goes in that direction. You're redirecting it here. And it might have a tendency to if it gets too much flow, it could start heading down the driveways. A thought and something, if you're going to do a little bit of bituminous work, place a small berm at the south driveway where the parking lot and driveway meet.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be raised much, but it'd be enough to just redirect it back to south again.
Yeah.
It's a small little thing, and if you're doing some pavement work anyway on there, it could make a big difference as far as that. You certainly wouldn't have any issues with it running off onto your adjacent, you have substantial property there, and there's a lot of area where it can currently run off, and most of it runs off that way anyway. So that's one thing. We've had other panels like this on previous submissions. And one of the concerns, especially from butters at the time, if some of the board members remember, is some glare which might be coming from there. I don't know if there is going to be any in here. I don't see any information associated with that. It's just a question to be asked and raised. If there's any glare in it that happens to be directed at certain points of the night, of the sunshine over at a certain part of the year, and if it shines into drivers along Meeting House Road, it could create an issue. I don't know if it is going to be because of the way you've arranged them and the tilt that you have. It's sort of hard to tell, but that would be a concern. On that previous submission, we had put a condition in for a buffer in case there was an issue, and there was an issue on one of the property owners. The vegetation that we had put in on the conditions was planted, and it took care of the issue. Now, I don't know if that's even going to be applicable here, but it's a question and a concern because of Meeting House Road being right there, and I don't know how this is all going to work out once it's built.
Right. So these are unique because they're raised. So you get the glare a lot of times with ground mounted or,
Yep.
on a landfill. These are, the lowest edge of these are 11 feet, and I think the highest is around 14.
Okay.
So, and this is also sort of bermed up from Meeting House, the parking lot's elevated.
It is.
So I think, the face of the panels that are at a 7-degree tilt.
Yeah.
So it's, it's really not much coming southward, as well as the elevation that they're built on and then the elevation of the structure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't see any way you would get glare
Yeah.
on Meeting House Road.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, there's really no, I think the closest, there's a residence back here.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of vegetation buffer there, and those are older growth, older growth trees, probably 35 feet.
I think you're right. I think because these panels are raised, the elevation of your parking lot is raised, and the panels are raised.
Right.
It would be unusual that any reflection would go back down, because it would, essentially, the reflection is going to have a tendency to go up. So
Correct.
it should be above any kind of travelers in
Right.
Meeting House Road.
And then quickly on the water, these panels they're placed on the canopy structure, but there's about a 1-inch gap between them in every direction.
Okay, so I didn't
So
pick
it
up
doesn't
on that.
contain, it's not containing the water and sending it all in one direction.
Yeah.
It's coming through the canopy itself. So it
It's
doesn't
going-
have a water
It's going
management
through the canopy.
through the canopy, yeah. So the panels are bolted to, the cross members of the
Right.
structure.
Yeah.
But there's a 1-inch gap
Okay.
between them. So,
Okay.
it allows the flow of water to go through. So we're not, say, channeling it into
Yeah.
gutters and down downspouts and sending it out that way.
Okay.
So you get a lot less of a rush
Right.
of water like that, so.
That's helpful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Good. Okay. Warren, did you have questions?
I have no questions.
And Bob Wirtschafter?
Yeah, how many panels are we talking about here?
It is, let's see here, 540, 480 watt panels, so.
Yeah.
There's more of them. Now we're dealing with 600 watt panels. We can make them smaller, but this was the design, so.
And that church has that load?
No, this is going out to the grid, and it's being sold to Eversource.
Oh, okay. As I was gonna suggest to you, if you were trying to be economical and take the load of that church, you've got way too.
Yeah, I would agree. No, this is, it's not going through the building, it's going to a meter
Okay,
and to
so
the pole.
you're dealing with interconnection and
yeah.
all the other stuff
Yeah.
that goes with it.
So they have the interconnection agreement, they're through that process. We applied for the building permit and then we're notified we needed to go through the plan review. So.
Okay, and you're not planning to sell any use any municipal allocation of Chatham's allocation, or you're directly selling it all? Because the last guys that came with the panels said,
Right.
oh, we're gonna use part of Chatham's allocation, and I just want to make clear that there's nothing here that is going to hit into our restricted amount that we use very carefully to our own systems.
Not to my knowledge, but Tessa Shields is actually on remote. She works for the developer. So we're hired as the contractor, engineering, you know, to build them. She could speak to that, but to my knowledge, it's going direct to Eversource from
Okay.
them, so. I don't know if Tessa's on, but.
Is that a, did she want to comment? I can't see if a hand is raised or not.
Well, it's not a planning issue, I just,
Yeah,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
so they,
All right.
if they can work it out themselves. I was actually asking more from my other role in the town as the head of the energy committee, so.
Okay.
You're fine, so.
Okay.
And the glare issue, I don't think that it's, the only concern might be a plane that might fly over at a certain time
Right.
and that would be the only people that would ever see any
Glare.
glare that would come off of that
Yeah.
at all.
Okay.
Okay.
No questions.
No questions. Warren, you had another question?
Actually, I had a question, maybe actually two questions. I had understood that the panels were really going to be servicing the church. And if they are not, the question would be if there are any utility poles or existing utilities on Meeting House Road that can absorb the electricity that's going to be generated here. And if not, then what is the plan to locate those facilities, underground, above ground, or whatever? Yeah, and I have a comment for the group.
So no, there won't be any need for additional poles to be installed. There's actually a new pole that is installed right in front of the property. Let's see here. There's a new pole like right about here. And then we are setting a new utility-owned transformer, but that's gonna be inside the property line. So I think you can see on, page PV 101, kinda just has a simple layout of where the equipment's gonna go. And there's an existing pole there, dropping a utility-owned, transformer, and then underground to the utility pole that's existing. It's about a 15-foot distance from where the transformer to the utility pole.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, good. Good. Any other questions from the board? Or any questions from the public? So I'll just remind the board, yeah, go ahead, Arthur.
Just a clarification. So from the utility pole, all routing of utilities is going to be underground then, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So we'll go from the transformer to the pole
Yeah.
with a riser pole, and then
Okay.
right up to a go-out
Got it.
switch. Yep.
Okay, great. So in your staff report, if the board is inclined to approve the amended site plan, we've included our one standard condition, and we've reviewed this as a limited site plan review, considering the adequacy and arrangement of pedestrian traffic and circulation and the compatibility of structures. We'll just note, I don't think we'll condition this as we've agreed.
I do have one more question.
Okay, go ahead.
The transformer itself, was that actually reviewed by the building, by the proper departments, that they knew they were dropping in the transformer as well? Because I don't know that they would just say, go right ahead without adequate review of a transformer.
So the building permit has been submitted, but we held the building permit until this review happened first. So usually the building commissioner will review, usually the fire department as well at that time.
I just don't want to say, hey, we said yes, now they can go and put a transformer on without somebody
We'll,
being very careful
I'll
about
make-
how that
To
transformer.
clarify, it's a utility-owned transformer. So it
It's still,
falls in there
it's
for a
still
bit.
being put in on this site
Okay.
as part of this site plan. And somebody needs to make sure that that is adequately put in and so I don't know how that affects our approval or not.
I think it's out of our purview, and it is reviewed Katie is saying it is reviewed, correct? After our approval comes through,
Right,
and as part of the building permit.
right, and the electrical, like all of the permits will be reviewed by the appropriate inspectors.
Okay.
Okay. So as I was saying, we just want to make a note of the concerns of DPW Director Robert Faley. And he says in his note, due to the proposed slope of the solar panels, rainwater will concentrate and flow off the low end of the panels. But you've told us that that's not exactly correct, that some of the rainwater will be diffused through the gaps in the placement of the panels. This may lead to concentrated flows running down the parking lot and driveways and reaching Meeting House Road. This has the potential to cause standing water or icing issues, and Mr. Faley would like to see the engineer ensure that additional stormwater flows will not reach Meeting House Road, or design a system that will intercept and mitigate any additional flow and retain stormwater on site. And Art Spru has suggested building a berm on the south side. Do you want to just go?
On the south drive where the driveway is at the upper end of the parking lot.
Right.
Okay, great. So
Like,
that's,
like a speed bump sort
That's
of
it. Yeah.
thing. yeah.
It can be gradual.
Yeah.
It's not going to take much to redirect it.
so we won't condition that, but we'll ask you to take a look at that situation and
Absolutely.
mitigate any extra stormwater runoff.
Okay.
All right. So with that being said, I would ask the board for a motion to approve the site plan, the amended site plan with our standard condition. And I don't see any need to add any other conditions. So may I have that motion?
Also move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Art Spru, second.
And let's vote. Art Spru,
Art Spru, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approve.
Bob Wertschafter,
Bob Wertschafter, approve.
Frank Scherer,
Frank Scherer, approve.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve the site plan. Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda, we just wanted to take literally 5 minutes or so to go through some updates on our long-range planning initiatives. We are not planning any discussions for this evening, but we just wanted to get updates on the progress of each initiative. And I think Katie Donovan will help us out, starting with West Chatham Neighborhood Center.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as far as West Chatham, the West Chatham Neighborhood Center goes, we've been working with the Cape Cod Commission on some revised language that will include some special permit criteria. We've had a couple of meetings with them. We have another meeting tomorrow, and my hope is that we will have something to present to you at your meeting on February 26th, 2 weeks from
Yeah.
tonight. We have also submitted a DLTA grant that was due February 7th for an updated build-out analysis of the West Chatham area that's being proposed now. So those items are moving forward as requested by the board.
Great, thank you. And then regarding scale and massing of residential structures, Bob Wertschafter, we were going to check in with you about the next steps to update your research. I don't know if you've been able to get in touch with the people you needed to yet.
No, I have not.
Okay,
I need to do that.
yeah, no,
I need a
that's all
little-
right.
I need a little coaxing from you, Kate.
Okay, I can do that.
And then regarding housing initiatives, I'll let Katie explain. We sent a letter to the Housing Trust.
Yes, so a letter has been sent to the Housing Trust based on a request to ask the trust to either affirm or suggest new zoning initiatives that could be worked on by the board. The trust is, I think, I would assume, probably going to take that up over the next month or so. They've been very heavily engaged in a couple of other projects where they're working on RFPs for the 2 properties that the town had purchased for affordable and attainable housing. So working with the Housing and Sustainability Director and the Chair, we'll hopefully get something back to you for discussion. At the same time, we'll ask the Housing and Sustainability Director to come in because she had made suggestions to the board as well about some potential zoning initiatives that could be looked at by the board. So we'll try to have that discussion all on the same night.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Any questions from the board? We just wanted to give a brief update. We'll fill you
Can I
in.
ask them one question?
Sure.
On the massing issue, I was reading through the file and I indicated that there was an indication this was a question raised by the select board a while ago. And I guess because of the pandemic, it fell between the cracks or between the boards.
Yes.
Yeah,
We-
which
we
is
were-
fine.
Yeah.
But my question is, in the context of bringing our research up to date, do we have examples or a better feel as to the kinds of massing issues the board was concerned with? Do we have examples of it? Because if we knew, we had a better idea of what the concerns are by examples, that might help us craft the kind of remedy. Just a question.
I'm not completely sure how to answer that. Bob, do you
Well,
want to take a
I
stab?
raised the question, is
Yeah.
it the size of the structure? Is it the amount of coverage on a piece of property? Is it the collective size in an area? Or the incongruity of a single home compared to the other homes around it? I don't know which of those is really I mean, we could look at it in any of those ways, and I don't know, I agree.
Yeah, I think.
The select board has not come
Well,
on that question.
Right, and it's kind of, it's actually, if I may say, I think it's something that the board, as we move further into this project, I think we need to determine that. We need, based on the data, we need to decide what are our criteria that we want to address in the bylaw. So I think it's something that we haven't determined yet. And to say that this is an issue that came up from Select Board in 2019 is a bit of a misunderstanding. It has been on the Planning Board's to-do list ever since I've been on the board. It's part of something that's called for by the comprehensive plan, which was passed unanimously in 2003. So it's been something, it was also part of the recommendations from the Cape Cod Commission 2014 visioning study as one of the priorities. So it's something that's been on our to-do list for a long time. And I think Select Board revitalized it in their memo to us in 2019, and you're exactly right. During the COVID pandemic, the board was asked to do only regulatory matters, and we were not allowed to pursue any long-range planning initiatives. And as you've noticed, West Chatham Neighborhood Center has been, when we picked up long-range planning again, West Chatham Neighborhood Center was the priority, and others were secondary. But now that we've made significant progress on West Chatham Neighborhood Center, which has also been a continuous project, I think the feeling of the board was that we wanted to begin to pick up some of our other priorities and revitalize them again. And the first step was to take a look at the research that Bob Wirtschafter and our then principal planner, Ali Sabatino, did from the assessor's records to see where we stood in Chatham on this issue. But I think once we update that research, we need to pour into it and make the determinations that you're suggesting.
Yeah,
What do
thank
we
you.
want to address?
Thank you for
Exactly.
for
Does
that
that make
summary.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does, but it makes sense to me too, but I think that we could ask Mike to maybe go back to his colleagues and see where
Well,
they are.
If there are specific concerns from Select Board,
Yeah,
we could. We could,
informally. Informally.
but I think it
Let me just say,
falls more
Madam
into.
Chairman, I didn't mean to be critical
No,
at
no, it's
all.
okay. That's all right.
I
I'm-
get the sense that maybe you might think I was being critical,
No.
but I wasn't. I was just asking for more information in order to respond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's all right, and I was just explaining, no offense taken whatsoever. I do think it falls more into the planning board's purview to make those determinations and make recommendations to the select board what we want to address in the bylaw. And I believe we'll be able to make those determinations when we can examine the research again. Any other comments, Warren?
Yes, a couple of comments. Given the dearth of vacant building lots in town, it generally is the case that the issue of massing is inextricably linked to one of our other assignments, which is try to preserve the existing housing stock in Chatham such that we're not faced with building giant mansions in place of whatever was built there originally. And we had done some work along the lines of trying to incentivize the maintaining of existing footprints and housing in exchange for some sort of flexibility with respect to building larger additions and so on. But given that pretty much every special permit application of which I'm aware, generally there is a demolition involved. And therefore, if we're trying to preserve existing housing stocks, it's difficult to not consider concurrently the massing issue and guidance on that point, along with how we might encourage people or applicants to work with what is there and maintain the character, the visual appearance of Chatham as it currently exists. They're two sides of the same coin, given that there's, you can't just look at massing unless there's lots of vacant land to build something on. And you can't look at just the maintaining the existing housing stock unless somebody wishes to do so and it has an incentive to do so. So given that those are both our tasks, they're sort of we need to look at them together. And at the same time, the way I think that we had concluded was the best approach to dealing with some of these is guidance to the permit granting authority, whoever that.
I think we wanted something a little stronger than guidance.
Well, the permit granting authority ought to be working from a set of metrics and guidelines for
Yes.
when it is appropriate to approve an applicant's request for a special permit.
This is everything that we'll be doing when we begin to draft the bylaw. First step, we want to look at the data and just, be sure that we're basing our decisions on the facts of the town of Chatham. And as I recall, most of what we need to look at is the special permit granting process, because most of the residential properties in Chatham are pre-existing non-conforming, and if there is change or demolition or additions, they will be going through the special permit granting process. So that's most of what we need to do. But again, we didn't really want to get into a substantive discussion this evening. We just wanted to do an update on the progress, and all of these discussions are good. I'm just a little leery of going too far into a discussion without looking at the facts and exactly what's happening in Chatham and reviewing that research again. So we're just going to incentivize Bob, who did a totally brilliant job with the initial research. We just need to update it. Did you want to make a comment,
Yeah,
Art?
just one short thing. It was surprising, Frank, when we learned that a majority of the lots now are pre-existing non-conforming.
Right.
And how does that affect how you go about establishing the conditions? Because maybe when the massing was first thought of, oh, well, you have a 40,000 square foot lot, and there shouldn't be a lot of issues associated with it. But
Right.
3/4 of those are not. Now, what should there be a whole slew of different ideas and approaches because we're dealing with something like that? If everybody's coming and they want to put more on a smaller or inadequate lot, what should be the challenges that we look at, and how should the condition process be looked at, maybe a little bit different than a lot of other things that are out there, of whatever zoning deals with. So there's a lot of unanswered questions.
if
I
I-
think we still have to work on the data yet and understand that a little bit more. And once we do, I usually like to see trends or things that sort of pop out and say, you know what, here's the things that seem to be the most challenging and whatnot, and if we can tackle them, that might get us a little bit closer. I like to look at that a little bit and see how we could use that to help us with our decision process.
Yeah, can I respond just
Yeah.
quickly?
Go ahead. Sure, no worries.
I agree. I've sat in a number of ZBA hearings, and I don't have the sense that they consider massing or scale at all. So I think it would benefit them to have some direction from planning. Now, whether that's suggestions or mandatory, I believe that's being looked in with town council right now. We're taking a look at that. And if we're not, perhaps we should, because I don't know how much we can mandate
Yes.
to ZBA.
I think it is a complex issue to make special permit granting criteria. It is something that, in regards to West Chatham, we did consult with town council, and to be honest, when we put in that request, as I recall, to town council with our previous planner, Ryan Christenberry, we didn't know what the response would be. We didn't know if there would be appropriate legal mechanisms that we could use to put in something a little bit stronger than a guideline. Fortunately, I think his response came back that there are ways to do that, and that is what Cape Cod Commission is helping us to draft, because it's a fairly complex issue, and we did need to consult with Cape Cod Commission to help us draft that language. It could be, and I'll see if Katie has a comment, it could be a similar situation that we'll run up against with special permit granting criteria for massing of residential structures. It could be also somewhat complex and something that we may need to ask for some assistance with. But I'm going to ask for Katie's input on that, if you have any thoughts, or if I'm correct in my evaluation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I would agree. I think that we, again, once the board decides the direction that they want to take, we'll determine whether or not it's a straight, bylaw amendment. Again, more than guidance, but something that would actually be proposed to go into the zoning bylaw. I've had conversations with the current chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I think that they are open to having conversations also with the planning board to talk about what something might look like. But I did let her know that there is, we are at the beginning stages of this, just taking a look back at the data again. So I think that it's something that they're open to, or at least the chair was. So again, the process, we always involve town council whenever we propose a zoning bylaw amendment. So that will certainly happen in the future as well. So we're just not at that point yet.
Yeah. Good. So I think you're spot on. It's a complex issue, and as we move, we'll have to move through it step by step. So, any other points? Then we'll go to the next. If there are no other points,
No.
to be continued. And we do, for chairman's comments, we have your schedule for 2024 planning board meetings. Just wanted to take a look at that. For the March 11th meeting, so far we have no filings. Is that correct, Katie?
That's correct, yes. So there was, today was the deadline for the March 11th meeting. And so we were just wondering if the board would be willing to look to cancel that meeting, as staff is not available that day. So the board could meet if you'd like to talk about anything in particular, but there are no applications for you to review. So we were looking to potentially cancel that meeting of March 11th.
Sounds good.
Any objections from the board to cancel the March 11th meeting if there's no regular business. So, yeah. Seems the board is agreeable to cancel the March 11th meeting. And then the next item is the May 13th meeting, which is the same day as annual town meeting. So we would want to change the date of that meeting to either May 6th or May 20th. So any preferences from board members to change that date to either May 6th or, I'm going to suggest May 20th.
I find that if we move any of our meetings from one Monday to another Monday, there's always something else there. Is there is it an opening on the 6th or the 20th?
The Board of Health would be meeting in the afternoon. We would have to meet again, we would have to meet at 5:30.
Oh,
Which we do
that's-
commonly, yeah.
Yeah, that's no problem, yeah.
Either date is fine for me.
Okay, any other comments from the board? I'm going to suggest I guess it doesn't really matter. I was going to suggest May 20th, just because it goes April 22nd, May 13th is annual town meeting, then May 20th, then June 10th. That makes more sense to me than doing it the other way.
Yeah, works for me.
Is that comfortable? Is May 20th good for everyone?
Yeah.
It's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. So May 20th, but again, I think the board is agreeable to either date, but why don't we say May 20th?
Great, thank you, Madam Chair, and we will provide a revised schedule for the board.
Okay, great. Any other comments from the board or the public? Because if not, I will ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Art Spru.
Art Spru, approve.
Warren Chain.
Warren Chain, approve.
Bob Wertschafter.
Bob Wirtschafter, approve.
Thanks, Scherer.
Frank Scherer, approve.
And this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve that we adjourn the meeting. And please, let's note the time as, looks like 6:50 in the evening. And thank you all for participating, and please enjoy the rest of the evening.